I believe we are good to go.
Okay, I assume we have a quorum,
Yes.
and let's call this meeting to order. First on the agenda, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
A motion, and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve minutes.
Have a
John,
motion to approve the
Sorry,
minutes?
before we keep going, are you here in a technical or policy capacity?
Susan is online, so.
Yeah, we were gonna split our votes, and I don't think we got the.
Yeah, I think we decided that it has to be either or, so just
Okay.
so we're clear with that. John is here in a technical capacity today.
So I need a motion from the technical,
No, both policy,
okay,
So that first motion would need to be from the policy too.
yeah,
okay.
sorry, for the second, for the agenda as well. Sorry, John.
Can we put that on the agenda, what it needs to come from?
Yes, that's,
I'm always-
that's the goal of that little band you see on the agenda.
Presentation.
I was looking at the,
But yeah, you know,
So you need
I'll definitely
someone
have that in the future.
For the policy to approve the minutes.
Yes,
I'll
from
make that
Richard,
motion.
we've got one from Richard, can we have a second?
I'll have a second. All in favor, say aye. Okay, now we gotta do technical?
Yeah. Or
Okay,
no technical, we can go move on to,
oh, okay. You're confusing me,
I apologize.
okay. Next fiscal year 2026 final transportation planning work program.
We're gonna need to do the minutes as well,
the last one was looking for the
so we
agenda.
had to go back, fix the agenda and then do the minutes.
I messed with it.
No, I think so, the guy that's running the show. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
Can I get a second?
So second? So I'll second it. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Can we do some introductions? I don't know some of the new staff you have.
Apologies, I'm Rachel Getch, I'm a transportation planner at MAPPA, I'm currently the lead on the RPA-18 administration.
I'm Lexi from Rural Atmosphere and Transportation.
You know everybody over here?
I do know.
We have a couple new at the back, so do this.
Yes,
Oh, I didn't see them.
Elisa Manuel, I'm the Grants and Agreements Specialist with MAPPA.
Brad Grief, I'm on the combat team.
Okay,
And then we've got Carlos Morales here at the end, he's the transportation and data manager as well.
And online, we have Susan Miller, Bob Riesland, Keith Monroe, and Travis. And
okay,
Susan, I put the links to the materials in the chat window on Zoom here, so let me know if you're able to access those.
I am able to access them. I just haven't had a chance to review them before the meeting.
Great.
Alrighty. Okay, go ahead.
we're ready. Okay, fiscal year 2026 final transportation planning work program.
Yep, and I'll take this. So basically, every year we have to provide a transportation work program for our RPA staff and the funding made available by our team. Overall, we're still focusing on the core areas. Our long-range transportation plan is due November of this year, so we're busy trying to get that out of the way. We're gonna try to work in a couple of block talks throughout the couple of communities in the RPA area to help to develop trail development within the region. And then finally, administer the joint RPA-13 and 18 Safe Streets for All program project. Super excited about that. Some new things that we want to highlight. Previously, we used to categorize our work activities into 9 different buckets of work. We've consolidated that to 4 little buckets. That makes 1, the accounting side a little bit easier, and 2, being able to communicate what we're actually intending to do, which are based on our required work programs, right? So every year we have to provide a tip. Every year we have to do a call for projects. Every 3rd year we do a public participation plan. Every 3rd year we do a civil rights plan, et cetera, et cetera. And so those are programmatic sections that kind of reflect our new activity. Overall, our allocation of funds for this year is 34% less than last year, so the funding situation went a little bit lower for our staffing direct labor costs. So this is how they're reflected. These are the new categories: management and administration, regional transportation planning, tip and local projects, and complete streets work. Overall, this hasn't really changed a whole lot from the draft we presented a couple months ago. If anything, there's been a 1% increase in the total funding allocation from Iowa DOT. Not a very big change. We're also showing our proposed expenditure for the remainder of the Safe Streets for All program, which is there as a separate. Next slide. We did receive, this is super exciting news, 1 public comment on our draft teacher AEP this year. Mary asked us to look at and consider enhanced passenger train rail services between Harrison, Monona, and Woodbury counties. She mentioned the Bright Line in Florida, that high-speed rail, that's a public-private partnership, that she would like to see some investment in that. The state of Iowa recently released their rail and freight plan the last couple of years. Within that plan, one of the major concentrations is that eastern portion between Chicago and, I'm gonna butcher the name, but Dubuque, I wanna say.
Well, I know there's a plan from Chicago to Iowa City.
Correct. But it's not, that is phase 1. Phase 2 is to expand it westward. Still not a whole lot of action there. MAPA staff has continued and will continue to work with the Federal Railroad Administration on their passenger freight study, and will continue to work with the Iowa DOT on future rail and freight movements within the state and throughout the state. So that was super exciting. Someone paying attention to the plans that we're doing, so that's good.
So back to the rail study that was done probably 10 years ago now, maybe longer. The plan was to run basically high-speed rail from from Chicago to Omaha. And one of the tracks that they want to utilize was Iowa Interstate. Well, the problem is Iowa Interstate is not designed to handle the speed that a high-speed rail would require. So it's kind of going nowhere, at least in the western portion, for now.
Yeah, and so we're a long ways away. I think as part of the FRA study, additional lines and scheduled services were being looked at the Amtrak service between Lincoln, Omaha, and Des Moines. But again, depending on funding, future funding availability, future track reconditioning, et cetera, et cetera. Many of these rail corridors are privately owned, BNSF, UP, et cetera, and our passenger freight tends to share some of those lines, which creates bottlenecks and creates points of conflict that for a high-speed rail, you kind of want a dedicated line. And so that gets into land use and transportation decisions about where would you put something like this? Some people would say, hey, put it in my neighborhood for economic development. Others would say, you're not taking my prime farmland to put this rail service through. So it's fraught with a lot of complications, a lot of issues that are still a long ways away. but we'll keep abreast of the conversation going forward. Next slide. And I think this is where we are in the timeline. Right now, we're seeking final approval of our TPWP so that we can turn it into our state and federal partners, cement that in by June 1st so that we can get started on our fiscal year starting July 1. We'll also have draft tip coming up, and we'll hear more about that later today. And then final tip due in July. So busy couple months for us, super excited. This is, one is wrapping up and another one's picking up. So we're gonna need a motion from the technical community.
I'd make a motion to recommend approving our final transportation planning work program.
One second.
All in favor? Alright. Need a motion from the policy, then I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. All right. Fiscal year 2026 draft transportation improvement program.
So we've split the draft tip up into a couple different agenda items today, just because we have a couple things we need to go over. The first bit is our STBG and TAP program for the next 4 fiscal years. The reason we're going over this now is because we did not have a call for projects this year because we decided that we didn't have enough funding to cover any new projects, so we were gonna give it a pass. With potential of opening up for a call again next year. We did open a call for TAP projects and we didn't receive any applications. So with that in mind, we do not have any new projects that are going into the program for the TIP this year. However, we do find ourselves with $1 million deficit in fiscal 28 for a number of different reasons. So the first one being that when we put these programs together last year, we used our starting cash balance instead of our fiscal constraint balance. The reason that those two are different numbers is because we have a Mills County project that was let and spent less than their total award amount. So when we use that cash balance, the difference was returned to the RPA. However, that difference is returned prematurely because the project is still not fully closed out yet. So we had accounted for another $500,000 that we didn't have as a region yet. It should still be coming back to the RPA in the near future as that project gets closed out, but technically right now that money still belongs to Mills County. So that's a $500,000 difference there. And then in addition to that, when we received our funding targets from Iowa DOT, the amount of funding received was about almost another $500,000 less than the estimates we received last year. So between those two discrepancies, we have a total deficit of about $1 million in fiscal 28. As I mentioned, we didn't have a call for projects, so currently we do not have any projects programmed in fiscal 29. But we do have 3 projects in fiscal 28, one of which will need to get pushed out to 29 in order to retain the fiscal constraint within the program. So Rachel, can you go to the next slide, please? So we have a programming spreadsheet here, if you can open that up. And kind of give everybody an overview of what we're looking at. We'll have to reshare this screen so Susan can see it. Susan, can you see that spreadsheet?
Barely.
Can you pass the? All right, so I'll try to make this a bit bigger so everyone can see. So if we come over to our fiscal constraint bits, it's this table at the bottom left here. I'll make that a little bit, but maybe not that much bigger. All right. So here you can see what we have as our beginning balance for the program this year. These were our estimates received from Iowa DOT when we did this last year, and these are the new estimates This row shows the total amount that we have allocated to various projects in each fiscal year and then our final balance. So there's this $1 million deficit here is what we're trying to fix. So MAPPA's recommendation is we have three projects here. One of them is not enough to cover that deficit, so even if we did move that one out, it wouldn't really fix our issue here. But if either of those other two projects were pushed to fiscal 29, then that would put us back in constraint. So those three projects here, so the Mills County project is the one that wouldn't solve it on its own. And then we have these two projects, one from Pottawattamie County and one from Harrison County. So MAPPA's staff recommendation to the board is to pick one of those two projects to move out 1 year to retain fiscal constraint within the program. And that would kind of open it up to the group for discussion.
So is it really $1 million deficit or is it gonna be 500,000?
So hypothetically, it depends on when that project closes
What
out.
project is it?
It is, let me check back in my notes here.
I think the reason why the estimate you got for 26, 27, 28 was less because the uncertainty of what the transportation
Exactly.
will look like.
And there is that as well, for sure. That project. Should have had this pulled up already, it can take me a minute to find it.
While we're waiting, does anyone have any questions?
And one of the explanations too is that for the SCBG, we have to remain in fiscal constraint in every year that we're providing these funds. Unlike the transportation set aside, where we can go below fiscal constraint, we just have to show that in the 4-year period, we have a balance that is fiscal constraint. This one, unfortunately, we do have to show every year being within that fiscal constraint. They don't want us to over-program in SCBG. And right now, we are over-programmed in fiscal year 9 by the magnitude of over $1 million. And so I think, a couple other factors that affect this. One, final letting and closeout of projects, how much they're really gonna go above and below for this program. So that, those are uncertainties that we won't know until those projects close out. And what was that?
So that's L16 from Will Creek to Minota. So that project was awarded about $1,200. And then so far has not spent the full amount for construction costs.
So what?
So it says L16 from Will Creek to Minota.
Could be Harrison.
That's not Mills. It's in TPMS under Mills County. So that's a thing.
went right through our county.
Switch it. Jacob, what are you doing?
I'm gonna need to do some more digging on that one.
That sounds like Harrison County.
It does.
And right now, what we have programmed in 25 is Shelby County, M16 from city limits of Shelby, Iowa North to County Road, F32, payment rehab for 1.8 in 25. If that's still letting before September,
It's done,
it's done. Love to hear it. Above or below? Did you overspend or underspend?
It changed between engineers, so
Yeah.
it'll be more, but.
Okay,
Alright, you guys are, yes, that is a Harris, so my mistake, that is a Harrison County project. So that is a Harrison County project that was awarded $1,200,000. And was let for construction costs of $667,553. So that difference is where we're getting that extra cash balance.
Say that again, where's it coming
It comes from the Harrison County Park.
from? I don't know the balance.
So it was awarded 1.2 mil, and spent about 660,000. Ish,
So 580 some.
yeah,
So they were awarded the 1 million for the project.
correct, so they were awarded 1.2 million of STBG funds.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, when they went to let the project, it didn't let for the full award amount. So the project is still open, and I'm not sure if,
So it's technically obligated.
correct, so they are
They can
technically
spend that
obligated funds.
5%.
They are technically obligated funds, but because they were showing up in the historical project spreadsheet that we get from regularly from Iowa DOT, that spreadsheet had credited that difference back to the RPA prematurely. The way that we were reading it incorrect.
Mhm.
If we can move the Pot County back a year, kind of have problems with that one, it was. I have a program that was 3.4, which is what I applied for regional equity, I don't think we had it. So it was awarded the 2.27, so I'm not to a complete project at this point. They could probably go back a year and we still need to work a regional equity thing. I feel bad yanking Harrison out, since I'm their engineer for only 2 more days and they're not here.
Did they hire somebody?
Yeah, June 2nd, sorry. Somebody outside of the Dave Sims, outside of the county engineering world anyways. That'll give me 3 more years to think about regional equity.
Sure.
Carlos is pretty excited about that.
We can talk some more.
So if we do move that project out to 29, then you can see by the balances at the bottom of this spreadsheet, then that we would be put back in within fiscal constraint. And as we run through future project selection processes, there is always the option to try to move up a project. Or if you want to resubmit another application for additional regional funds, we have those, then that is an option as well. Again, those apportionment numbers are probably, as we see, they're subject to change based on whatever comes out in the funding bill.
I feel like we had a city project we programmed earlier into the plan that probably didn't help us either, because it was kind of hard to balance and programming earlier here. It was a hard one.
And just a note on that, John, as well, because it's in Pottawattamie County, you do also have access to a certain amount of NPO funds. As far as I'm aware, that's not been applied for.
Yeah, they went through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, they
Don't open that
couple
one.
projects, yeah, yeah.
Good.
So,
He actually applied for 2 projects, one
Ah,
was
lovely.
approved.
yeah, and one was awarded in the other case. But I think that's going back to Rosecom, maybe, not sure, but
It's a different committee.
it is a different committee, so
But,
that's another, that's
Let's just
another.
focus on the task at hand. I mean, we appreciate your flexibility, John. Again, like, I think the out years are still kind of imaginary. The ones we care most about, or I care most about, are what's happening in 26, 27, which looks to be in fiscal constraint now. The moving the Pot County project, that 1.145 million, is that the right one?
No, that's 2.2.
So 2.27 to 29 really does help us a lot. So greatly appreciated.
So for next year, 800.
Well, I want to pay, I just want to pay 29.
Say it, John, there's an extra 800 there.
I will caution that at the more we reduce our ending balance, the less flexibility we have when those targets change.
Or when projects go over budget, one of the things that we have been starting to notice is some of the increased construction costs coming in. So just this right now gives us a little flexibility to change those numbers. Again, as a reminder, administratively, we changed the number, we can change the numbers administratively, they're
Within a
less than
threshold.
10% of the total cost. or exceeds a certain amount. I think it's different for the RPA.
Yeah, we don't.
I am remembering the MPO one, and that doesn't make sense here, so I'm not even gonna mention it. So that's what we can do administratively. If we are going above and beyond 10% of total cost, the project scope changes, so you're changing your project termini. You need to include a road, an intersection, whatever. Happily to do it, but we would have to do a formal amendment. Again, there is flexibility here. If you need additional funds, your projects are coming in more expensive than you originally anticipated, come talk to us, come talk to Lindsay, Rachel, we have great staff, happy and willing to work with you to make your projects happen. Anyway,
So again, thanks, John, for the flexibility on that one. We will put it to a vote with the entirety of the rest of the draft tip, I believe. So, actually, I think we do have one voting item to approve the program and then one voting item to approve the draft tip in its entirety. So, not yet, that one. Thank you. So that was our STVG program for our TASA, formerly known as TAP, interchangeably known as TASA, program. There was no change to that starting balance, so in the case of this program, both that cash balance and the fiscal constraint balance were the same, so we didn't run into any issues there. We did have a decrease in funding targets, the same way we did with the STVG program, but that difference was only about $100,000, and did not ultimately impact our fiscal constraint for that program. So some projects are being rolled over from fiscal 25 to fiscal 26. So I'm gonna pull that, Rachel, you can see it quick. I'm gonna pull that spreadsheet back up just to show which projects are being moved. So we do actually have one in the STVG program that's being rolled over into fiscal 26 as well, and that is a Harrison County project. The intent with rolling over this project is to make sure that it is captured in the TIP. It is still mostly, I think, on track with, we're hoping that it'll get let in 25, and if that does happen, then we will issue an amendment to the fiscal 26 TIP to have it removed, given that it was let already in 25. John, I believe that's the plan for that project.
You mean Harlan or Harrison County?
Harrison County, this one here.
we need you to wear your Harrison County hat.
Is that a tap?
This is STVG, sorry,
Oh,
I backtracked.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah,
that was my understanding from what you requested on that project.
Yeah, I think we push that one into 26.
Into 26,
Yeah.
perfect. So if that one does end up getting let in 25, then we can amend it out in 26, then that's fine.
I don't think there's any point in letting it 25, that'd be
Okay.
a summer letting, next summer construction, so
So we're rolling over, it's probably gonna stay rolled over.
26.
Perfect, so we will leave that there. And then in our transportation alternatives program. Travis says online that we can just call it TAP. Everyone else in the office calls it TAP. You guys keep giving us documentation that says TAP. So for our TAP program, we did have most of our 25 projects needed to get rolled over into fiscal 26. So a lot of so basically everything except for the Shelby County Trail connector is getting rolled over into fiscal 26. So that's for our project status updates, it doesn't change anything to do with fiscal constraint, it's just pushing everything out of them. So I'm sharing this just for information for the board.
What is the balance remaining in tap?
Yep, so our balance remaining is about 670,000. So this is the fiscal constraint table that we are using for TAP. Again, we have the beginning balance reflected here. This grayed out italicized line is the apportionment that we based our last TIP on, our last program. And this is the updated apportionment that we received this year from Iowa DOT. Total amount for projects programmed in each of those years. You'll notice that 25 is much lower and 26 is much higher because of all those rollovers. And then our final balance for each year on that bottom row. Do you have any questions about the TAP program? Alright, so hearing none, I will go back to the presentation here quick. Alright, so the, yeah,
Rachel, did you find contact trails in Pottawattamie County?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I was able to get in touch with Jeff.
so the last thing we had to talk about here, it is on the agenda as a separate agenda item, but I'm kind of rolling it in because it feeds off this conversation and is a part of our draft tip. Sorry, backtrack. First, request a motion to recommend approval of the STVG and TAP programs as presented with those rollovers and that modification of that Pot County project from 28 to 29.
I'll make that motion.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, I'll make the motion for policy.
Second,
Is that second? All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
So then that rolls us into the drafted document as a whole. So we go to the next slide, please. So quick refresher, what is our tip? So the tip is the annual work product for the RPA that is required by both MPOs and RPAs from the IODT. It lists our capital and non-capital projects within the boundaries of the RPA proposed for federal aid and swamp funding. The program years for this fiscal are 26, 27, 28, 29, with fiscal years starting in October. And then I presented the regional projects in the last few slides there. So those STVG and TAP funded projects are the ones that the region has funding authority over. So we go to the next one. So some updates to the tip from last year to this year is first and foremost that updated fiscal constraint and project list table, which should all be available in the document. We didn't print it off just because it's like a 50-page document, so it is available online. Hopefully everyone, Susan, sorry, didn't have a chance to check that ahead of time, but it is available online. There was some update to language to align with IODT guidance. So Rachel, if you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so some of the amendment and modification triggers have been updated. That mostly just included clarifying the language as far as it was mostly just a clarification of the language.
For the amendment procedures.
Yeah, it didn't change a whole lot. It was mostly just we were updating it and aligning it. Before we had 4 different areas that we kind of compared what a difference between an amendment and a modification was and what triggered each of those. And those weren't aligned previously, so we were lining those up with the updated guidance. We also incorporated the new 2024 PASA language, as well as just some other language on fiscal constraint, public participation. That also included documentation that we previously hadn't noted that we were including, even though we were still actually doing it. So we included that as well in the final document.
So if we want to, does anyone have any questions on those language revisions, or would like to see more detail on those? My understanding is they were all fairly minor, and they didn't programmatically change anything to do with how we run the tip. So in addition to that, there was one project amendment with the city of Logan. So this is the one that is on a separate agenda item that I'm rolling into this discussion now. So that didn't change anything to do with the total funding awarded. So this project was a Safe Roads to School trail project of kind of that main north-south street in the city of Logan, to kind of connect the neighborhoods with the school at the north end of the city.
Highway 127.
I believe so. So if we do the next slide, please, Rachel. So we've got a map here. So north second map, yeah, so 127. So it's not showing up very well here, but we've got the trail proposed route in green. What we've got on the left is what was approved and what was included in the tip last year. So there's been a couple of modifications that you can see in the map on the right. So
Probably use the mouse
probably, yes, so I can take
to annotate that one.
there we go. Okay, so up here we had so the trail was going all the way up to the school. What's happened now is the school is developing further south. So the trail is now ending at this new area, and the school is going to take over construction of the remainder of that trail from this termini up to the school location. So because that does technically change the termini of the trail, it does need to get amended in the tip. So we are presenting it in the new tip as the new project with this new termini. The only other change is this one section down here on Glen Avenue where they're going to jump the trail. They're gonna cross the trail a little earlier on Glen Avenue and have it go this way instead of along the south side of the street, so you can kind of see that modification over here. The description has also been updated to include all of the termini, so it's kind of like a bit of a spiderweb trail here, so we've got one ending here, one on the south, one to the east, and one up to the north. So the new description does kind of outline that a little more clearly. So those are the only changes that were made into the project, and we are, at the request of the City of Logan and Iowa DOT, we are just updating those and kind of wrapping them up into the new draft tip so that it will be reflected accurately. As Carlos mentioned, this is because the termini changes, it is one of those adjustments that does need to be approved by the board. But it can be approved by the board as a part of the approval of the new draft tip, just so we don't need to do a whole bunch of different motions for this. Any questions?
No questions, do I have a motion from the technical committee?
That was just discussion.
Well, we can still do discussion if you have any questions or you'd like to ask something.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to recommend approval.
Okay, do I have a second? We have a motion and a second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. We have a motion from the policy.
So moved, Miller.
You're going with this.
A motion and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
So with that, that also opens our public comment period for the draft tip, so it's gonna be a 25-day public comment period, and it will be available on our website for anyone to review and submit comments to us using the posted email address, and phone number. Then once that is, I should have put a timeline up here, I forgot. So once public comment closes, then we will kind of incorporate any comments that we received during that timeline. The draft will be submitted to Iowa DOT today, now that it's been approved, it's not due until June 15th, we can be proactive. And then the final will come back to this body in our meeting in July, I believe, is that right? In July for final approval and then submission to the DOT by July 15th.
Any further questions? Thanks, moving. So officer elections is that time of year again. You might remember at our last meeting, we actually discussed moving this to every 2 years, and that will be happening, but because that hasn't been made official in the bylaws yet, we will be going forward with our annual election, and then that'll kick in next year, so there won't be an election next year, but the year after. All right, so just a quick review of our current policy board chair and vice chairs are Charlie Parkhurst and Susan Miller, with the technical committee chair of Jacob. You are free to rerun, just to make that clear. You don't have to switch anyone around if that's not preferred, but we will be taking nominations and electing a new officers today. Just as a quick review on what the policy board officers and technical committee officer does as well. We currently only have the chair on the technical committee side. That's because when we last talked last year at about the same time, it was decided that there wasn't a need for a vice chair in the technical committee at this point in time, as we're working to update our bylaws to include technical committee language that might need to change, or if the body decides that becomes a need. But as it currently stands, we have those three officers. Again, policy board, that's mostly elected officials from other jurisdictions unless you're designated alternate. And those are to guide and set policy in the committee to comply with state and federal legislation. And then technical committee is that's just to provide expertise from engineers, public works, planners, etc. All right, and these are just some of the responsibilities that would fall under those officer positions. Essentially, you just have to be present and be willing to execute the different board and committee actions, as well as for the vice chair, that's essentially just to act in the chair's absence. Great. So I'll leave that up to discussion among you all. If there anyone who is currently in a officer position would like to maintain that position, especially with taking into consideration the fact that we're moving to a biannual election, and those who have been in those positions have only been there for the last year, we could essentially just rerun those same elections as from before, if that's the preference of the different groups. We will be running these as technical and policy, so please know that you can only vote for your policy or committee.
Fine, keep it.
I'm okay with rerunning my seat.
Okay,
So mine.
all right.
I'll move to nominate for the technical chair.
I'd second that.
Same thing. Thank you, Susan. And Charlie?
Move to vote for Charlie and for Susan. Can I do both?
Sure. So Angie makes a motion for both. Can I get a second? So this would be, you can second, okay,
You're seconding for both?
perfect, thank you. All right, that concludes our election.
Oh, do we not have people vote on things? We called motions, but there was no voting.
You're right. I apologize.
Kind of
Stack it up a little bit.
Sped through those a little bit. Okay, so we had a
All those
motion
all those
from,
in favor of electing Jacob Farrow as chair of the RPA-18 technical committee, say aye. Aye. Those not in favor. Motion carried. All right,
and then we have the motions from Angie, seconded by
so you have a motion to elect Susan Miller as vice chair of the RPA-18 policy board. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Motion to elect Charlie Parkhurst as chair of the RPA-18 policy board. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
there we go.
Fun, isn't it?
I have to get my brain in order to do that one. All right. So you guys might remember, we've been talking a lot about small community representation. The board asked me to come back with a little bit clearer idea of what that would actually look like. So we've tried to put those together. If we're still confused at the end of this, I don't know what we're gonna do. All right, so this is sort of just to set a baseline for what membership currently is. We've got the 4 counties, Harrison, Shelby, Pottawattamie, and Mills, and we have the 3 cities, Missouri Valley, Harlan, and Glenwood. There currently is no city representative for Pottawattamie. Also, on the next slides, you'll see a lot of SCR, that just means small community representative, just so we clarified all of our acronyms. All right, scenario 1, add run
Hold
rotating.
on one second.
Yes.
Can you go back to that last slide?
Yes.
Did you say that Missouri Valley currently,
So at our last meeting, the body voted to include Missouri Valley. Technically, that hasn't been made official because that has to be an update to the bylaws. But we're proceeding with this, the small community representation discussion as if that is official because they will all be added to the bylaws at the same time and be approved at our next meeting. So we're acting as if that kind of has already happened, even though officially, technically,
okay,
it's not quite there. All right, so scenario 1, add 1 rotating small community representative, so that would be this plus 1, could be from any of those communities. I put together.
Oh, because it's me. Shoot.
That was the problem I had.
So you have your laptop open,
Yeah.
Angela, you go to it on your laptop and just change the sharing permissions quick, then that should fix it.
Oh,
Avoca and Oakland had the largest populations.
yes. All right. So this is a table of all of the communities. I have it sorted for those, over 1,000 or more than 1,000, but less than the 2,500 limit we set at our last meeting. So those don't have to be the ones we consider for the rotating or caucus small community representation, but that is definitely a recommended option so that it doesn't provide burden to a lot of these small communities that are maybe only a few hundred. So those might be the ones we consider for rotating positions if we're looking at every county. And we're gonna pop back over here. All right. So this is a sample of the bylaws language that would look like. This is essentially, we would just keep membership as those four counties and 3 cities, plus just one additional that could be from any community within the RPA-18 region. Any question on this one before I move on? All right, scenario 2, we add one rotating small community representative for each county. This would look like those 7 plus 4. So our original membership plus 4 additional small community representatives. This is not necessarily a recommended version or recommended scenario, just because that would be a lot of additional membership that we'd have to take in addition and keep into account for quorum. But we do want to make sure we're adding the small community representative and presenting all of the options available. All right, number 3, this is the recommended scenario, just from the staff. This would look like adding one small community representative from Pottawattamie and then designating those 3 cities as additional small community representatives. Another version of scenario 3 would be just to add that Pottawattamie small community rep and not necessarily to designate Glenwood, Harlan, or Missouri Valley as small community representatives as well. That would essentially mean you have 4 counties, the 3 cities, and then just one designated small community representative. Okay, scenario 4 is essentially no change, but it's essentially taking that last bit that we talked about in scenario 3, where we would only designate Glenwood, Harlan, and Missouri Valley. And there would be no change in membership, but we would essentially be saying, okay, cities, that you are now the functioning small community representatives for the entire region. But they would be fixed, right? Some of these other options, they're rotating or caucus. It could be from any communities. There can also be limitations put on that as desired for some of these other changes, but for these, it would be specifically Glenwood, Harlan, and Missouri Valley. Last one, 5 would be this was to add a caucus, so a rotating rep for the entire region, plus designating Glenwood, Harlan, and Missouri Valley. So this is really similar to number 3, except for instead of Pottawattamie, it could be from any community in the entire region. So a quick recap of those. This is essentially what that breakdown is. You have membership plus that one caucus rotating. You have membership plus 4 caucus, but from each county, so that would not be at large. And then number 3, which is the recommendation from the staff, that would be membership as is, plus 1 from POT, plus those 3 SCR designations for, oh, I have that number on the bottom wrong, excuse me about that. But number 4 would be membership plus 1 caucus and 3 SCR designations, and then number 5 is essentially membership as is, plus we just changed those designations. I think I accidentally swapped 4 and 5 there on that slide. That might be confusing, but they're essentially the same idea. All right, any questions or clarifications?
So each of those cities will be a policy member?
Yes.
So our quorums might get tougher if they don't show.
I mean, so here's the thing. The only one that would significantly affect quorum is scenario 2 because we'd be adding 4. The other ones, 1, 2, and 5. Yeah, 1, 2, and 5, you're adding 1 person, which does not significantly affect quorum. And honestly, we've been doing really good about quorum. Typically, we have more than enough for quorum. So good job, everybody. So I don't see that necessarily being a problem in the future at all. The number 2 is really the only one we were, oh gosh, it starts getting a little messy.
Can you bring the slide up for number 3 again, please? How is that not adding 4?
Oh, I see. So in this situation, it's saying that Glenwood, Harlan, and Missouri Valley would exist
they're-
as the small community representative, and those 4 are already
They're already members.
included. Well, Missouri Valley will be once the bylaws get approved, but Glenwood and Harlan and Missouri Valley are already considered part of this existing group. So this scenario would only add 1 additional small community rep from Pottawattamie County.
Okay.
And that could be fixed, going back to our list. You can see that Avoca is the largest community under 2,500, but over 1,000. So that could be a good option for the Pottawattamie SCR, just because they're technically under our official 2,500 limit, but they're still large enough to really have that say in the region. But alternatively, that could be from any Pottawattamie County community as well.
John, do you have a good feel for who would be willing to attend meetings to represent?
That might be a better question for Susan than me. She's probably more.
I think Avoca has a city administrator who would be interested. He would be knowledgeable, and
Who's that? Susan?
Tyler Trout.
Perfect. The twist on that one, going back, was if we wanted to make sure, we wanted to give, you might notice that Woodbine has a very similar population as Avoca, and Oakland's not lagging too far behind. And some of those other communities, again, if we wanted to give them the opportunity to be in that rotation, you could essentially have. We would then want to stick with number 5. Which is essentially the same as number 3, but it could be from any community within,
Not exclusive.
not just
to
Pottawattamie. So those 2 are kind of our top options that Mountain staff are recommending at this point.
I have a question, but as far as like policy board goes, in order for this thing to be balanced, you have 1 community from Glenwood or Mills County, Glenwood, Harlan, Shelby County, Missouri Valley, Harrison County. Pot County doesn't have representation. So if you say have 2 representatives from Harrison County with Woodbine and Missouri Valley, does that skew the voting process any potentially?
Potentially, and that was why we kind of came up with the idea of having this scenario number 3 of having that rep solely for Pottawattamie to sort of even that out a little bit. We could also do this without the designation to SCR by Glenwood, Harlan, and Missouri Valley is essentially a formality. Just as far as how that language looks like in our bylaws, it doesn't actually change their voting power or anything like that. That's just the formality of designation. So we wouldn't even necessarily have to do that if we didn't want to either. We could just say, okay, there's 1 small community representative for the entire region, and we're just gonna say they need to be from Pottawattamie County. That's another way to go about it.
Who normally comes from Missouri Valley? Not adding.
No one.
That's a new
So
Yes.
they added 2 people.
Kind of, we've already updated. Yeah, we've already updated, I don't know, is Richard on? He did RSVP as well, so So did the administrator from Missouri Valley. I'm not sure if they were able to.
So one of the reasons we're really interested in Missouri Valley, to be perfectly honest, is some of the future work that we are taking on with this Safe Streets for All does involve Missouri Valley. Missouri Valley also has that highway improvement program where the relocation of Highway 30 is taking place in the next 10-20 years. That's gonna mean additional and important transportation implications for Missouri Valley as the state moves forward with their redesignation of the corridor. So that is why we would like to have more representation from Missouri Valley so that we can help them with the state project going on, with our Safe Streets for All project, the safety work that we're doing, and a lot of regional interest in that area. Very selfishly, I'm gonna say we're also interested on the Nebraska side because Highway 30 does impact Blair and the transportations of goods and services across the river there. So this is an important corridor that we care about that impacts both the RPA, the MPO, and our COB. It has a lot of different implications, not just transportation. So that is kind of my plea for Missouri Valley to be more involved with this group, so that they're already eligible, but making them more aware of the resources and the fine technical expertise that we have in the room. So that's my push for that.
Additionally, note that technically policy board would have 8 members at that point, not counting Pottawattamie County's 2 votes, but typically it's under 1 person, so I'm not gonna include that. That's currently, it would be 7, or I'm sorry, currently it's technically 6, not including Missouri Valley. So for quorum, we need 3. If we add, which we've decided to add Missouri Valley, if we were to add 1 additional, that would only give us 8. Quorum requirement then only becomes 4. There are currently 5 policy members here today, and that's not including anyone from those other 2 communities. So I really don't think the quorum question is really gonna be.
That quorum was over at.
So could the small community be on the technical board or it needs to be on the policy?
Good, right?
Because right now there's 2 votes in each county, right? Mills and Glenwood, Harlan and Shelby,
Yeah.
Missouri Valley and Harrison, and Pot has 2 already.
And that was part of the reason where it was recommended that it be more of a caucus, because technically Pottawattamie, like as you were bringing up earlier, Pottawattamie County technically already had that additional 2nd vote wrapped up into their 1 representative. So they're kind of already breaking even without even adding a rep from Pottawattamie. So that's something to take into account too. That's kind of why we're taking a really hard look at scenario 5, where it would just be okay, because we have 8 votes. Or no, yeah, we have, at that point, we would be having 2 votes for each county. And then 1 vote caucus rotating. That's kind of the poll for this.
So it doesn't matter even.
So if we leave it as caucus rotating,
voting.
it's an even number. If we add it as Pottawattamie, technically we're leaving it the same way it is now, but Pottawattamie as a whole would have 3 and everyone else would have 2. So it would still be more even than it is now, but it wouldn't be completely even from that perspective.
But if you have one that rotates, that could be interesting also, because then you need to go around every 2 years and say, now it's Shelby County's turn, now it's Harrison County's turn. But then are you going to get anybody that really wants to go? I don't know.
And the learning curve is steep.
But Susan and Angie, I'll lean on you. There are additional resources that MAPA does provide that we hope are helpful in your pursuit of projects and understanding and funding, right? right? One of the main things that we pride ourselves currently is being able to apply and be successful in applying for additional discretionary funds. So we also want this committee and agency to grow, very selfishly. To ensure that we have enough work and we're providing the technical expertise and the backup to as many different communities as possible.
Does the body feel like they're at a point where they can make a decision, or would we like to give some time to think about this further?
Well, it sounds like MAPPA's recommendations changed. It's not scenario 3 anymore.
I would say they're very similar options. The only difference is where that representative is coming from. They could still be coming from Pottawattamie in this scenario. And then it would just rotate, or we could have a designated caucus. Representatives, like for instance, going back to that table, we could say, okay, they have to come from a city over 1,000 or over 1,500, which would narrow it down to, I believe it's Avoca, Woodbine, and Logan. So I just want to make sure we're presenting all options, and so you guys understand what that would look like on the flip side once we've actually enacted this, and understand the implications of what adding.
Yeah, so if you do it that way, it kicks Shelby County out from anything else. Over 1,000, because Harlan's already in.
Yeah.
I live in one home.
Let me go back. There's a lot of different subtle limitations, I feel like, that could be put on this to kind of engineer what communities can and can't be on that rotation. I would hesitate to encourage too much of that, but I also understand the need to have maybe a set person that you know is going to be committed to being involved.
The board has to decide on which scenario.
Yes. As of right now, it would not affect the technical.
I think we're spending a lot of time on those small community representation. It's really not gonna amount to meaning anything actually, so. I think scenario 3 sounds the most logical.
So this would be NAPA's requested motion.
So I need a motion from the policy.
Yes.
Do we have a motion?
So MAPPA's recommendation is still scenario 3.
Yeah.
I'll move to align with scenario 3.
Susan, and then you a second. All right.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Cool. This is an opportunity for members of the public to be provided an opportunity to speak. If no public comment, we shall continue. All right, so this is just a couple of updates from MAPPA. You guys might remember from before, we are working on our RPA-18 and 18 Safe Streets for All project. Just to get a little update on that and what that's going to look like. We'll be continuing to bring updates to this body as it's really relevant to the communities of Glenwood, Harlan, and Missouri Valley. Like Carlos was saying, this is one of these projects that is affecting that community, and so that's one of the reasons that we felt it was important to include them in the body. You might remember Safe Streets and Roads for All. We received a grant back in FY23 for $100,000 for the development of the CSAP for the transportation network in those 3 communities. The counties outside of those communities are covered by a different plan called it's a 97 county plan. It covers most of Iowa. So that's why we're only focusing on these 3 communities within RPA-13, and then that was in collaboration with RPA-13 with 4 communities within that region. So what this essentially is going to look like, we released a notice to proceed that was effective as of May 1st of this year. So our consultant team, SRF and Snyder, they're starting to get work done. We have engagement that is going to be ongoing throughout the summer. So we're going to be taking advantage of a lot of those community outreach events that are already going on. We're kind of just going to tag along with that so that we can reach out to these communities and get some public feedback. The project end date is supposed to be August 31st of next year. And we should be all wrapped up by that point. The final plan itself, so I talked about stakeholder engagement, MAPA staff and RPA-13 staff will be included in that. We'd also love if you guys had any recommendations, opportunities that you wanted to share. So whenever we have these updates, we would love to hear from you guys on if you have anything that we can take back to that group. Additionally, just as an kind of an FYI, this is going to look into the crash data and conduct an analysis on that. If you're familiar with what we're doing on the MPO side, you might know that it's we put together a high priority network which took into account risk, the current injury the current injury
Current crash rate, so it looks at current crash data and crash rates of existing intersections and segments,
Yes.
roadway segments, and then it kind of can extrapolate from that data various roadway characteristics that lend themselves towards a higher number of crashes. So we are aware that like more rural areas just tend to have less crashes in general. So as we're putting this network together, it's probably gonna look more like a high risk network, so we can be a little proactive in the projects that we recommend for safety improvements. So the bulk of the plan is going to have that risk network as well as kind of a toolkit of safety countermeasures. And the idea being that whenever any one of these cities goes to look at roadway improvements, they can kind of consult with the plan to see what kinds of safety improvements could be done as a part of whatever other work they're doing. Or if they want to prioritize safety projects, they'll be able to provide a list of recommended projects that could be pursued in order to decrease those fatal and serious injury crashes within communities. One thing that I will say on this, specifically for Jervis and Angie, is that we are hosting a goals workshop on the 17th of June that we would love for you guys to attend if you are available. I think that's gonna be virtual at 10:30 a.m. So we will be getting invitations out for that shortly, and if you guys have other members of staff that would be interested in participating, we would love to get their contact information as well. So as part of that goals workshop, we're gonna look at what we want to commit to. So a lot of these plans are committing to 0 fatalities and serious injuries by a particular year. So we're gonna talk a bit about that. We're gonna go over more information about the plan in general. And then kind of next steps, and there will be what we're calling STAG meetings, so safety technical advisory groups. So we'll be looking to put together a list of names to be included in those, and there will be, I think there's gonna be 3 or 4 over the course of the plan to kind of help that development.
3 or 4 meetings.
3 or 4 meetings, yeah, of that STAG group.
Okay. Any questions about Safe Streets work? All right, so I'll just give a really quick update. We're running over a little bit, so I'll just run through this really quick. So as you might be familiar, we'd like to run through grant opportunities. This is the state recreational trails opportunity. It also has a federal side, but we're not going to talk about that today. This is looking at state and local government agencies, municipal corporations, county or nonprofit organizations as eligible applicants. Purpose is recreational trails throughout Iowa, and part with that being it has to be open to the public. For that includes acquisition, construction, or improvement of those trails. Expected funding $2.5 million. I think that number has been finalized. I'll have to come back with an updated number. Those are due July 1st at 5 o'clock, so that's coming up quick. With an expected award date in October. Glenwood, Glenwood has already taken advantage of this program in the past, so we just wanted to make sure that other communities were also aware of this opportunity. Any questions? All right. That should be it. We have Napa Council of Officials on June 18th at 11 a.m. I think that's we have someone from the Omaha.
You close down the presentation and open up, you can just do the slide in there. That goes over it.
Let me just.
Refresh.
Yeah.
We have the Omaha Airport Authority CEO David Roth, who's going to be coming to speak at that. He's going to be talking a lot of that big update and renovation that they're doing at the airport. So that should be super interesting. I know I'm really excited about what's going to be shared there. That's going to be in Ralston. So again, June 18th, it includes lunch. And just make sure if you want to attend that you get registered so we can make sure we have all the food stuff and whatnot figured out ahead of time. So if I will also send out a follow-up with that QR code or a link to the registration, whatever one works, after the meeting, just so you guys have access to that as well. And then we have RPA-18 meeting at July 9th. That one is an important one because we'll be finalizing the tip, and there's a couple of other action items that we need to take care of at that meeting as well. So again, you guys have been doing great with quorum, good job. But please continue
Will that
to
be
be doing
here
great.
in Pot County?
It should be at Pot County, right?
The room's reserved for both the states.
If we can secure the room now.
Yes.
Still be changing weeks on it.
There.
Sorry about that.
If I'm on vacation.
Thanks, Susan.
I'll be able to call in on the road if I can.
Yes,
It's
and-
still available to do that.
Yes, that is an update. So I was recently talking with the Iowa DOT RPA coordinator, Travis Collum. He has confirmed from their interpretation of updates to chapters 21 and 22 of the Iowa Code that virtual attendees at hybrid meetings are allotted full voting privileges as they would be as if they were in person. So just so you all are aware of that.
I would guess that 2/3 of MPOs and RPAs meet virtually. So
If
Exclusively.
yeah, I noticed.
Wait.
That's potentially, we haven't talked about that at Napa staff at all, but if there's interest in moving completely virtual, I know for some of these communities, it's a stretch to drive. I know Pottawattamie has been closer. But again, I'll leave that up to the group if that's something you guys are interested in. Feel free to let me know and we can get something, a more formal discussion on the books. Other than that, that's all.
The motion to adjourn.
So moved.
The motion to second.
Thank you all. Thank you.